Hello again, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Inside Canes Recruiting, our periodic look inside the Miami Hurricanes' pursuit of new players for the future elite prospects around the country. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport's.com, and really this is the Stephen Wagner show. I'm just here to kind of drive it for him a little bit because I've been totally engrossed in team coverage the last few weeks, and Stephen has stayed on the recruiting beat and is on the pulse of what's going on with the Canes. And Stephen, your new sidekick in recruiting coverage, Luke Cheney, we're out at High School Media Day this past weekend. Great event that the Miami Dolphins put on where they bring in all the coaches from South Florida, all the top players from South Florida over to Hard Rock Stadium, make them all available for interviews. And so Stephen and Luke were on the case, and a few really interesting stories came out of there, Stephen. And I wanted to start by talking about Derek Cooper. And just to refresh everybody's memory, he is the Hollywood Chaminade running back, absolute elite player, the guy that's been, if not at the top of Miami's running back board, certainly in the top two or so. And he broke their heart, and he committed to the Texas Longhorns. And yes, this was a big loss for the Hurricanes, even if momentary. There still is time for the Canes to keep pursuing Derek Cooper. And Stephen, you spoke to him, and he told you point blank that I will be attending Miami's season opener against Notre Dame August 31st. Now, before we get everybody all excited and, the parades begin all around South Florida, how significant do you think it is that Derek Cooper is going to take the time to go to Miami, Notre Dame?
Well, if we're being honest, I don't think it's that significant of a development that Cooper is going to come to the Miami Notre Dame game, because it was something that we kind of expected. We knew Cooper was probably going to be on Miami's campus at some point this fall. There's zero chance in hell that Mario Cristobal is going to allow the number one running back on their board, who is just up the street at Chaminade Madonna, who just committed to Texas, who Miami, we really felt like was in a great position for until about 2 weeks prior to his announcement, whenever Texas came in and really kind of stole the show late, that Mario Cristobal was going to go an entire season and not get him to campus a few times. Frankly, I think he'll probably get to at least one more game. When that's going to happen, I have no idea, but I would be pretty surprised. I would be more surprised if he didn't take a second Miami visit than if he did. But I think him getting down to the Notre Dame game in particular definitely is something that it kind of moves the needle a little bit. Because, we saw the kind of recruiting momentum that Miami was able to generate 2 years ago whenever they had the Texas A&M game at home and they whipped Texas A&M's ass. And if I remember correctly, they got, I think, like 2 or 3 commitments within the span of about like 10-ish days, give or take, after that. And then even last year, the Florida State game, Miami definitely was able to kind of pick up a little bit of momentum with some in-state targets after they whipped FSU at home last year. So if Miami is able to win this game, and if Mario Cristobal is able to get, quite frankly, what I think would probably be his first statement win, I know, they went to Florida and they blew out Florida in Gainesville last year, but come on, let's be honest. They were chanting "Fire Billy" 2 games later, and they beat Florida State last year, but they beat a 2-10 Florida State team. So those rivalry wins do matter, but Mario Cristobal still searching for that signature win, and if he beats Notre Dame, he is going to be able to market that to Derek Cooper. He's going to say, hey, that team that just went to the national championship last year, that team that was in the top 10 along with us, we just kicked their ass. We beat them. We are on exactly the same path, the same trajectory as Texas. You can stay closer to home on an NIL front. Miami, I think, ultimately will be able to have the resources to go head-to-head with Texas for Derek Cooper. NIL-wise, I don't think that Miami can afford to get into bidding wars for every single player, but they certainly have the resources to be able to get into bidding wars for the right player. If it's going to be, a Jackson Cantwell, if it's going to be a Derek Cooper, one of these really special guys, Miami absolutely has the resources to get into it for that. And, I think that being able to start the season with tangible on-field momentum, with a win that could potentially propel Miami into the top 5, top 6 in the country if they were to win that game, I think that absolutely could kind of swing things in Miami's favor for Derek Cooper. I mean, we've seen before, whenever Hard Rock gets rocking, whenever it gets, a little bit of that old Orange Bowl feel to it, I mean, it turns into a really, really special place. And, this is as big a game as Miami has had at home since I've been here. I'm really excited to see it because I absolutely believe that this is going to have some sort of repercussions in recruiting.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, what the atmosphere is going to be like in that stadium, the Canes Nation is absolutely going to show up. It is going to be just a feverish environment there at Hard Rock Stadium on the 31st. So the Canes can't get enough recruits into the building. And those tickets are going for a lot of money. But I assure you that the Miami recruiting office has reserved plenty in the little section there where they host recruits and their families, because it will be a big night for recruiting. There's no doubt. Now, you spoke to Derek. You've spoken to him several times throughout. Did you get a feel that the window remains open?
Yes, 1,000%. Miami is absolutely in this mix. And what kind of stood out more to me was the fact that he said that he thinks he's going to continue having these conversations with different schools until signing day. That to me was really, really significant because it shows that, he's accepted that he is going to be one of the most sought after recruits, and he wants to keep his options open. He is willing to keep his options open by keeping his recruitment open until signing day. That means that he's willing to continue entertaining Miami right until the very end. And, heck, it could even be one of these cases where if Miami does flip him a little bit earlier, Miami might end up having to play a little bit of defense to be able to keep him home. Because right now, Derek Cooper is the number one back on Texas's board because Texas has kind of fumbled their own running back recruiting. And so that's kind of how Derek Cooper shot up their list so significantly and so quickly. I do think that like I said, Cooper's probably going to get to campus at least one more time. I could see him probably taking trips to Georgia and Ohio State as well, because those schools were absolutely in the mix. But Mario Cristobal told Derek Cooper that they're coming. I think the exact quote that he gave Cooper was, "We're coming." And I fully 1,000% expect Miami to remain incredibly involved until the final minute. And I don't expect Derek Cooper to turn away from Miami until the final minute. I mean, this was a kid who we expected to go to Miami. I mean, really up until, a couple of weeks before his announcement a couple of weeks before his announced commitment to Texas. I mean, even going back to whenever he was at Cardinal Gibbons, it kind of felt like, man, like this could be a Miami kid. And I think that Miami has him absolutely locked in their sights.
I mean, come on, Sark. Aren't there enough running backs in the state of Texas? You got to come to South Florida to get your running back. I mean, I know you successfully have gotten the commitment, but come on, man. The Canes are coming, and there's got to be somebody over there in Texas that you can grab that could certainly fit your bill there for Texas and the Texas offense. So let's get this worked out here.
They tried, but one of them went to Michigan, the other went to Texas A&M. The Longhorns have had their share of, I mean, just straight up fumbling.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and so
Texas has it all going. How do they not get the running backs from the state of Texas that they want? Like,
yeah. from what I understand, Texas wasn't, really, really seriously trying to zero in on Cooper until this summer. They thought they were going to be able to get KJ Edwards, who ended up going to Texas A&M. Javian Osborne, it kind of felt like there was always a pretty good chance that he would end up at Texas. He ended up going to Michigan. He was another guy that Miami was shooting their shot with for a little while. And then this summer, it kind of became one of those things where Texas was saying, well, shit, all of our guys are going elsewhere. We need to find a new guy stat. They found Derek Cooper, and they made a very lucrative offer. They did. They found a way to get into his recruitment.
All right, so we'll be continuing to follow that one for sure. Another one that popped up that I was extremely interested in was Justice Fitzpatrick, the defensive back from St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale, the brother of Minka Fitzpatrick, who was just traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Miami Dolphins. Hey, Fitzpatrick family, do you really want to have to go on the road on Saturday to come back to play, to the Dolphin games on Sunday? You can have both Fitzpatrick kids here in the 305/954. Steven, it seems like the door is cracked a little bit open there. Justice Fitzpatrick has not committed yet to attend Miami Notre Dame, but you kind of get the impression that he's going to, don't you?
Yeah, so I kind of had I kind of asked around, and I'm definitely under the impression that it's more likely than not that he ends up at the Miami Notre Dame game. At the time we're taping this, he has not gone ahead and locked that visit in, but we do think that there's a really good chance that we see him at the game and that we're able to confirm him as a visitor probably within, I don't know, the next week or so, next 2 weeks, something like that. I fully believe that a window is absolutely open for Miami to be able to flip Justice Fitzpatrick. The gap, and he even said this himself, the gap between Georgia and the rest of the pack is not very wide at all. The rest of the pack is Florida, Texas, and Miami in no particular order. Right now, I would kind of feel best about Miami. I wouldn't sleep on Texas because Texas does have the SEC angle working for them, and that was one of the things that attracted him to Georgia in the first place, was the whole SEC angle. He was supposed to take an official visit to Texas, didn't end up taking that because he committed to Georgia instead after his first official visit. But, I mean, even after he committed to Georgia, his family was still wondering, man, should we go ahead and take that OV to Miami after all? And then they decided, no, we're not going to take any more official visits. We're going to shut things down. But Miami kept chipping away, and that gap has absolutely closed. Miami didn't take no for an answer, and I fully believe that the Hurricanes are in this recruitment. I don't think that Miami is going anywhere. He's another guy who I could absolutely see Miami getting to campus at least one more time, especially considering that he goes to a school that Miami has very, very strong ties to. I mean, Jason Taylor used to be the defensive coordinator at St. Thomas. Just back in 2024, Miami ended up signing 4 players from St. Thomas, including Jordan Lyle, who they flipped from Ohio State in December, whenever they just made their balls to the wall push for him. I think that Miami is going. I'm not sure if I'm ready to make like a formal prediction or anything like that, but I did enter a way too early RPM for Miami to get Justice Fitzpatrick back in January. And right now, I really don't feel terrible about it. I think that it's no,
Even
I'm not backing off.
To Georgia, you're not backing off.
I still think there is a legitimate chance that RPM could end up being correct in the long run. Miami's going to need to keep chipping away, but I mean, man, I'm telling you, if Miami gets hot, if they get into November, if they get into late November and they are actually like hot on the recruiting trail, I could see a little Hayden Lowe situation where, maybe a guy who, had kind of fallen off the map for some Miami fans earlier in the year ends up coming back and joining Miami's class. I think the Hurricanes are absolutely going to be in this.
All right, the bottom line is Miami's not giving up on too many guys. Okay, they haven't gotten commitments from everybody they've been recruiting, but there's no white flags being waved in Coral Gables. Okay, let's call a spade a spade. They are in it to win it and compete to the very end. And another one, a teammate of Justice Fitzpatrick, is Daniel Norman. Also plays for St. Thomas. He's an edge rusher who is committed to Oklahoma, of all places. Stephen, why did Daniel Norman pick Oklahoma over Miami? And are the Canes realistically in that fight still?
Yeah, that was one that I wanted to touch on real quick because right now I am not very optimistic about Miami's chances with him. I really do think it was just kind of one of these cases where Miami pushed just a little bit too late. Miami they didn't set an official visit with him until pretty late in the spring. Oklahoma offered him sooner. Oklahoma was really one of the first major Power Four programs to really jump into the boat. I know UCLA was after him earlier in the year, and UCLA was kind of the biggest program that was on him for quite a while until the Sooners offered. And then a little bit after the Sooners offered, that's when Jason Taylor said, "Man, we got to get you down here for an official visit." Miami is still absolutely shooting their shot. They are still communicating with Daniel Norman, but right now I do not get the impression that Miami is going to be in a good position with him. I'm pretty pessimistic about that window being open.
Well, it's never too late. About this point in time, a few years ago was when Miami got into the mix with Jordan Lyle, who was also at St. Thomas, and they ended up landing him. So things can happen fast when you're dealing with kids from South Florida and you're talking about keeping them in South Florida and you're willing to compete at the NIL level. Stephen, another one I wanted to ask you about is the number 2 overall 2027 prospect in America. That's a kid by the name of Mark Matthews, and Oregon, Tennessee, Alabama. They're probably the leaders of the early pack there for Mark Matthews, but he's another one that the Canes have talked into coming to Miami, Notre Dame. You think Miami has a chance there, considering he's a 5-star offensive tackle, and Miami recruits offensive linemen as well as anybody in the country.
Yeah, Miami absolutely is going to be in that recruitment, I think, probably next year. But right now, quite frankly, Miami just hasn't sunk as much time and effort into recruiting him as some of these other schools have. Oregon, Tennessee, Alabama, they've all made pretty strong, aggressive, concerted efforts for Mark Matthews. Now, Alex Mirabal is still communicating with Matthews. So is Mario Cristobal, but not quite to the extent that some of these other schools are. And, I asked him, so kind of, in terms of your top overall schools, where's Miami kind of sit? And he said, oh, kind of somewhere in the middle, which to me is pretty much saying, yeah, Miami has a little bit of work to do. Will they eventually get there? I 100% think so, because no one is able to get into the picture for elite offensive linemen like Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal. But right now, it absolutely is clear, Miami's going to need to keep chipping away. I imagine that Miami will probably fully turn on the jets for Mark Matthews. It probably sometime either later this fall or early next spring, once we're actually able to, really start turning toward the 2027 cycle. That's when I think Miami's really going to, crank up the heat.
All right, Louisville running back commit, Lecky Tompkins. He's a running back commit. Miami offered him as a defensive athlete, but they've convinced him, even though he's committed to Louisville, to come to Miami, Notre Dame. So that's a positive sign. And Stephen, is there anybody else on your radar beyond the guys that we've mentioned here that you think the Canes are picking up traction with here as the football season begins?
Yeah, another guy that I'm really getting good vibes from right now is Tamarian Watkins. He the 3-star linebacker committed to Texas A&M. Miami really loved him. I think they came in a little bit too late. They didn't offer him until May. And there was a period where it really looked like he was going to go to South Carolina. Then Texas A&M came in. But right now, it really is just between Texas A&M it really is just between Miami and Texas A&M for Watkins. Miami was able to successfully convince him to get to campus at some point. We do not know when yet. They have said we are going to visit, but they're still figuring out their schedule. They're figuring out when the best date is going to be. He could absolutely become a name that we're keeping a very, very close eye on here in, I don't know, late September, early October, especially if the Canes can, but really just outperform Texas A&M on the field. I really do think that the window could get a little bit wider for Miami. Right now, they only have one linebacker committed, and that's J.J. Edwards. I definitely think that it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if we're looking at Tamarian Watkins as the second linebacker in this class.
All right, so there's some little tidbits for you guys here today on Inside Canes Recruiting. So much more going on in the world of Miami recruiting. We've got the coverage for you every single day at CaneSport.com. If you're not yet a subscriber, please come to our website, become a member. You will not be sorry. Our team busts it every minute of every day to make you the most informed fan on the pulse of everything going on Canes. So your subscriptions are very important to what we do, and we would appreciate it if you join our family. For Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you for joining us today on this show, and we will see you next time, everybody.